Hello and welcome to episode 277 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. Week 12 is almost in the books. We still got a little bit of Monday night action to play here. But man, another wild week. Like I know we say that every single week, but so many people went to bed, Sunday and were like, yo, I got this. I'm up 40 points. And then my man, Saquon Barkley, go Birds, goes ham. I've moved Saquon Barkley all the way up to my Dynasty. I had him as my RB3 last week. He's still my RB3, but I moved him into the same tier as Gibbs and Bijan now. Moved Brees completely out of there. I'm excited to talk shop. We're going to talk about targets. We're going to talk about those guys that you should be chasing those targets to get you a title. Nobody better to chop it up with than my main man Snoog.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited for this Chargers-Ravens game tonight. I'm repping the Justin Herbert jersey.
I love it.
That's going to be a fun game. I'm excited to see kind of how both those teams play out, but yeah, what a crazy week. Remember on the pod that we did on Sunday, I said, it's not looking good for me. I'm starting a lot of players that shouldn't be in my lineups. I didn't lose. I can't say I didn't yet, but across 22 leagues, I have one rebuild. I lost. I am projected to win. I've won almost every single league already. It's down to one league against my buddy in one of my home leagues. I'm down 30 with Lamar and Derrick Henry. Yeah. But I won in every single league this week. You know why? Because Saquon Barkley.
Saquon went ham.
I have Saquon and George Kittle in like every single league, and a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs and Devin A-Chain, and they just carried me. I mean, I was starting Brandon Allen in a bunch of leagues this week.
Yeah,
Cooper
and
Rush.
That's a sign of an experienced dynasty owner. I mean, this week, I went 19-2. We have 5 startups in the offseason, and I took Saquon in 4 of them and traded him in one of the other ones because I decided to rebuild. You and I were all over Saquon. Saquon's been phenomenal. And it's just everyone's starting to say, well, should I bench Jalen Hurts? And I'm like, you just can't. Like, you have to start both of these guys. You have to roll. The touchdowns are going to be there. They're going to dominate rest of the way. Saquon has the easiest, tied with the Lions, strength of schedule rest of the season. Gibbs, Monty, Saquon going to win you championships. Today's show is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about targets. So this was our Buy-Mageddon week. It was crazy. We were missing Jamar Chase. We were missing Drake London, Garrett Wilson. We were missing some elite level wide receivers, and other guys stepped up. And this week, the target leaders, I told you all week it was Trey McBride week. I was thinking he was going to get into the touchdown, going to get a touchdown, but man, he led all receivers with 15 targets this past week. Snoog, Trey McBride's 17-game pace is 103 receptions, 1,100 yards, 136 targets, and 0 touchdowns because he hasn't scored yet. But man, once this guy starts getting into the end zone, like he's in a tier of his own. Bowers is in a tier of his own at the top. Trey's in a tier of his own at the second. And then, then it drops off because you got Kittle with age. You got Laporta, who's been struggling. You got a lot of guys in that area. But man, Trey McBride is going to be the truth down the stretch. The other tight end who's put up targets, who's second in targets over that time frame, is Jonnu Smith. I moved Jonnu Smith into my, he's my tight end 14 right now. I feel like he is the best dynasty buy there is when it comes to the tight end position. You can get him for a pair of thirds.
Yeah,
exactly. And I've been doing that everywhere.
Before this past week, I got him for 2/3 in a full tight end premium league.
Phenomenal.
The guy was rebuilding. He's like, get this guy off my team now before I lose the 101. And I literally was like, here's 3/3, 2/3 is all I got. And he's like, done.
That's what I've been doing too. I was like, this time of year, you and I have taught people so much about the rebuild process. They want to get a Jonnu Smith off of their roster. Right now, what I'm trying to do, and I just redid, I do this every Monday for the Discord. I update every single one of my dynasty rankings. And right now I have Trey McBride as tier 2. Bowers is worth the 101 to 102. I think more towards 102. I say McBride's worth 103 to 106. And then I have no one until you get to 1-8 to 10, which is Laporta, Hockenson, Kittle, and Njoku, and Otten, maybe even Pitts, Kincaid. They're kind of all in that area. I have so many people saying, Dad, should I be tearing up? Right now, you could still buy Trey McBride for Sam Laporta in a second. And if you have Sam Laporta and you're not doing that, I have no idea what to tell you, because Sam Laporta is not doing it for you. He had a phenomenal rookie season, but he's not going to be the guy to put you over the top. It's going to be Brock Bowers. It's going to be Trey McBride. And the other guys that when you're looking at, you got to chase the targets. You've got to look what's going on. And right now, Sam Laporta is not getting those targets. Brock Bowers had another 10-target game. Cole Kmet had 10. TJ Hawkinson had 9. Ertz 8. Kelsey 8. Henry 8. Kelsey looked great again. There are very few guys that I want in that middle tier. I don't really want to play with Sam Laporta. I don't want to play with Dalton Kincaid. I don't want to play Tucker Kraft and Mark Andrews. Give me Bowers, McBride, Kittle.
I
want to go down. Well, that's what I'm saying. I want to skip the next 8 guys value-wise, and I want to go down to Kelsey, Jonnu, Ingram, Goddard. I like
Cade Otton a lot, especially with how big Baker's been playing. Godwin's going to miss a ton of time now. I think
he's affordable now.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be the Mike Evans, Cade Otton show. I mean, Cade Otton's a stud. He's actually a good tight end too. Like, he's someone going into last year I had a lot of shares of just because I was like, young tight end on a decent offense, good player, like looks good when you watch him play. That's honestly what tight end comes down to. Like, the opportunity is everything, but like chasing the talent usually ends up being a skill set thing that drives them to being on the field. Like, look at Jonnu. We all knew Jonnu has been a good player for how long now? Since his Titan days. Same with like a guy like Noah Fant. Remember how much value he had in Dynasty back then? And now it's like he's someone that's just never been able to work it out, but like Jonnu did. So that it just comes down to, do you get into the hands of the right coaching staff, skill set? Does it match the skill set and the scheme that you're on? Like, Jonnu Smith screams Mike McDaniels, like that gadgety, big power, athletic guy that when you get down near the red zone, they have 2 plays. It's a tight end screen or it's a running back screen to Achane. And they literally run that every single game I see. And that's how they score. And that it's honestly a good thing when you have Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the field, because they're the threats. They're the decoys. They have the speed. It's opening up underneath. But this Miami's, they're going to go on a little bit of a run here, I think. I think they're going to squeeze into that wild card range and they could do some damage.
Well, Otton, I think, is that post-hype sleeper. He had 3 straight games where he was, or 4 straight games, top 5. Then he comes off a San Francisco game where he was, he still had 8 targets and he put up 11 fantasy points. This past week, only 1 reception, but he gets Carolina, he gets Las Vegas, and he gets Carolina again in the championship week. I think you go out there and you buy him. You were paying a late first. I think you can get him for an early second now. We were talking about post-hype. Last week, you and I were all over Tyreek Hill. It was going to be Tyreek Hill week. And then it ended up being Waddle week and Jonnu week and Achane week. Everybody but Tyreek Hill. Is now the time to go out and buy him? Is it? I'm with you. I bought Tua in multiple places. I think this Dolphins offense is going to win you championships. Achane, as long as Tua is in that lineup, is a top 3 running back, if not the running back 2 overall, 3 overall. He's right there. Waddle had a great week, but I'm like, what are we doing with Tyreek Hill? I'm holding him, but like, I'm a little worried after last week.
I'm holding him. He's gonna have his place in time. When they play the Texans, when they play all these good teams coming up, San Fran, Houston, I think they have another tough team in the fantasy playoffs. I don't know who it is, but I think Tyreek Hill is going to need to step it up and be that guy. He still looks phenomenal. He is no bit of wash. He's just not getting the same opportunities like he's always gotten, right? Like, he's just having a little bit of a down. Like Deebo Samuel, I guess you could say he kind of looks a little washed, but he's still him. Like him too. His production's not following how he looks on the field. Like he had 2 or 3 like 50, 60 plus yard plays that got called back from penalties yesterday. Yeah. Like, this is why you can't box score watch. You have to watch the games. If you're like, why is Deebo putting up 3 points? Go back and watch the 49ers game. Look up highlights to the game. They'll show it. Same with the Dolphins. Like that, if you watch them, you can kind of understand, like, okay, it's okay that the offense is not going through them and they're winning like that. Yeah. Like that. The NFL is changing into that. Like, it's going to be that way. Like, the Bengals rely on Chase. The Texans rely on Nico Collins. The Eagles don't rely on anybody because they have so many guys. But like,
but when you have a good coach like McDaniels,
if you don't have an Andy Reid, you're going to need to rely on your best players to make plays. It's that simple. And that's a lot of these young teams don't have an Andy Reid, or they don't have a McVay, or they don't have a Kyle Shanahan to dial up all these concepts for guys that aren't as good as your Deebo Samuels or Tyreek Hills. So that's kind of that situation there. Yeah. I think they'll turn it around.
I've moved Tua up. I mean, honestly, I was so down on Tua post-concussion, but you look at what he's done. The Arizona game was moving himself back, but weeks 9 through 12, he has now 10 touchdowns in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think he's this week QB3. And everyone talks about their schedule being tough, but look at the schedule in the playoffs. It's Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland. You know what I like about that? All three of those are primed for big time scoring, right? Houston, they give up a lot of points to the quarterback and the wide receivers, not a problem. Cleveland gives up a lot of points to the quarterback and wide receivers. San Francisco does not, but that game lends itself towards a game that's easily going to be in that high 40s projected range. So I think, people were starting to be worried about that because they played the Jets and Green Bay coming up. I'm all in on the Dolphins. Give me what we can here. Jonnu is coming up back-to-back absolute monster games. And I think that is the biggest buy from that tight end position. Zach Ertz is the cheap buy out of that. I think you can get Zach Ertz for a single third. I bought him for a pair of fourths, but I mean, he just continues to be insanely cheap. The targets are there. That game was ugly to start, but Jaden kind of bounced back. Second half really played in their favor. And I think Zach Ertz is a guy that, you get yourself a stopgap of a Will Dissly, a Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
One of those kind of guys. I want to move
You can call him that all you want. I'm like at the point where I'm like Zach Ertz over Tony Pollard this week, Zach Ertz over James Conner this week, because I'm especially in some of my 0.5 and 0.75 tight end premium leagues.
It's really right there.
I'm starting to sneak them in the flex range, especially when they're playing these cupcake matchups. Mm-hmm. It's Terry and Zach Ertz. That's like in Eckler. That's like his 3 targets, Jayden Daniels. And Ertz is just that guy down the red zone. They target him, I think, with Brian Robinson out and potentially Austin Eckler to miss some time. I think that it's going to be Zach Ertz down in the red zone, like a lot more than we would expect. So I'm excited for him. Will Dissly, another guy, like good quarterback play. Hunter Henry, another one. Like these are guys that don't be afraid to start them if it's 0.5 or 0.75 or even full tight end premium over a guy like a fringe RB2, like over Rashad White, over these type of guys. Like start them. Start the tight ends, especially if they have good matchups.
This is the time, Snoog, and I know we're spending a lot of time on tight end, but you and I really hammer home wide receivers and tight end, running backs all the time. I think tight ends, what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to tier off, like I was saying, I'm trying to tier off Laporta. I'm trying to tier off of Kincaid. I'm trying to do a reduced volatility where I can give a Laporta or a Kincaid and a wide receiver that's, someone that's a little bit older, like a Debo. And then I want to get McBride. I want to tier down and I want to get Otten and then a wide receiver upgrade, or I want to get, Jonnu and a massive wide receiver upgrade. And I think that's something you can do in the playoffs because people still value Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid's net, especially Laporta's name cachet. You put yourself into an area where you're going to be set up. Wide receivers this week was crazy, right? So the wide receiver 1 in targets was a tie between 2 guys that this week, let's be honest, they had horrible matchups, but they both thrived. Jacoby Myers against Denver. Keenan Allen goes out there again, and both of them, 15 targets. They both produce wide receiver 1 numbers. Are you investing in either of these guys down the stretch? And before you say anything on Keenan Allen right now, over the last 4 weeks is 6th in targets in the NFL with 46. 2 behind a guy that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But between these 2 guys, are you comfortable paying a third in a start 3 wide receiver, or picking up these guys as a flex, or trying to even bench stash on either of these players? Are you willing to give up a pair of thirds for either of them?
Yeah, I am. I think so.
No second, though.
No second. Yeah. No. I'm being precautious with selling first and seconds right now, just because we're getting really close. Mm-hmm. So the price on those picks are going up right now, and people don't realize that. But you held it this long. If you have, like, I hear people like in the Discord, shout out the Discord, by the way, we're doing awesome things over there. 480 plus people in there. Target Shop 24/7. You can sign up through Patreon. Link in my bio and in Dad's bio. You get the email link right after you sign up from Dad. But I get questions in the Discord. I'm 9-2 right now. I'm in first place by 200 points for, and the next guy close to me 7-4. Yeah. Should I sell my first now? It's like, why? Why do you need to sell your first? Like, if you're going to sell your first and you're in that situation, take a James Conner off your bench and grab that first and go buy Saquon Barkley and add a second. Go buy a superstar that's like a good player for the next 2 to 3 years, that you're not just like, okay, should I sell my first for Cooper Kupp? Like, why? Do you even need Cooper Kupp? Are you going to start Cooper Kupp? Is he a guy that's going to make your team better? Like, these are the type of things that you got to think of as someone that's a dynasty player, especially like Dad and I, we're in like 20 plus leagues. We can't be making mistakes like that, just shipping out firsts.
Yeah, guys
I did it in one of my leagues, and this is the league I'm rebuilding now. I started off 1-5. I sold my first during the startup for what I thought was a good deal for Travis Etienne, is who it ended up being. I absolutely tanked myself. I had to sell the house to get that first back. And now I'm looking like the 102. So just don't make mistakes. You make them, you learn from them. Hold on to that first. Take advantage of those vets. Like everyone was telling you to fade Mixon, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley because of the 27, 28-year-old Cliff being on a new team historically tells you not to go after these guys. Man, are they crushing it. They're league winners.
Well, I think there's two sides to that with the first, right? So because some people, it is time to go all in. And there are people that are in that 3 seed, right? And they just lost Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. And now it's like, would you give a first for Jacobs, Mixon, Cook, Henry? Absolutely, right? Those are the guys where you're in that 3 spot. If you're in that 1 or 2 spot, like you said, I had a guy message me yesterday. He goes, should I give a first for Pacheco and a second? I said, why? Like, why are you trading that first right now? He's like, well, I'm in first place, and the only guy on my bench is Tyrone Tracy. And I'm like, why? Just, you already have Tyrone Tracy there. If there's no trade deadline, wait as long as you can until you absolutely need it. Like, unless Snook said, unless you're getting a Saquon Barkley, a Devon Achane, a Kyron Williams, a guy that is clearly going to win you a championship. I did it the other day. I gave up a first and I forget what the piece was for Christian McCaffrey and Jonnu Smith. Like, that guy was just trying to get the points off his team. I think McCaffrey will be there he hasn't scored a touchdown in 3 weeks, which is wild. He will be in the end zone next week. I feel pretty good about that. But Snoog, a couple of guys that have sneaked into that area where you're like, are they worth a first? I have 4 guys right now that I say are worth the 201 to 203. And I'm just going to say their name. And let's say you're right on that spot. You need a running back, right? Would you pay a 25 first, a late 25 first for Alvin Kamara?
Yes.
Chase Brown?
No.
I'm doing it now. I'm there. We're looking at 4 straight weeks of RB1 production.
They worry me because Jahmyr Gibbs came out and said that the Bengals tried to trade up to take him at 18 or 16. And then the Lions took him. The fact that they were willing to go after a first round running back like that when they had Joe Mixon and they had Chase. They ended up getting Chase Brown that year. So maybe I'm wrong, but that shows when a team shows willingness to spend a high pick on it's like, I think Chase Brown's a good sell high. I think you take a Chase Brown and you go get a Josh Jacobs, a Joe Mixon, one of these type of guys.
Yeah.
But I also think I could be wrong, and he could be one of those guys that's just a big riser, a young guy that ends up being a top 12 running back. So you could go either way with it. But
what about Bucky Irving?
I like buying him.
Do it. Right now I got him as RB14 in the same tier as Mixon and Jacobs. He's, as far as this class goes, he's number 2 in rushing, just behind Tyrone Tracy, number 1 in receiving yards, number 1 in rushing touchdowns, number 1 in fantasy points per game as a rookie. 13 fantasy points per game is worth it. I had a guy approach me yesterday and he offered me 2 seconds. And I said, nope, not doing it. It's got to be a first. And then we tried to talk about Xavier Worthy.
We both loved him in the pre-draft. I was close to putting him RB1 overall in the pre-draft. And then he came out and he was like 5'8", 180 pounds and ran like a 4.6. And I was just like, all right, dude, like that's not even like.
We have to hold each other accountable.
It don't matter. If I'm going with my gut from now on, I messed that up so bad. I said to Zoltan, I was like, it's so funny because I literally liked him and would talk to you about him all off season. Yeah. And he ran the testing and I was out on him. Like that quick to be out on him.
Well, and I think he's getting an opportunity, right? Like the other guys that we liked in that area, Trey Benson, Blake Corum, they're not really getting opportunities yet. And even Jalen Wright, one of these guys is going to be if they get the opportunity, is going to smash down the stretch. The other guy that everybody keeps asking me about, and I'm not talking about 25 first, but you're 1 running back short. Would you pay a 26 first for David Montgomery right now?
26 first? I think so.
I would not pay a 25, but I would pay a 26.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's late, yeah. The
Ravens the Lions have now played 9 straight games, Snoog, with 3+ touchdowns. And almost every single one of them has a rushing touchdown. He's going to score. Gibbs is going to score. And everybody's like, Dad, I don't want to pay up for Montgomery or Gibbs because I don't want them both on my team. I'm like, why the hell not?
You want to hear how much I don't care about how young or how old running backs are? My dynasty running back rankings right now. Saquon Barkley, RB3 overall. Or no, RB4 overall. I moved him to 3, baby. I have him behind Gibbs, Robinson, Achane. I honestly think you could put him over Achane, though.
I did. And the reason is I don't care about the age now. He's going to be this elite this year.
He's only 26, 27. Yeah. So Saquon Barkley is in my top 10. Alvin Kamara's in my top 10. Derrick Henry's in my top 10. Joe Mixon's in my top 10.
Ooh.
Josh Jacobs is 11 with CMC.
Hold on. Because I have it Achane 4, Brees 5, Kyron 6.
Kyron's not in my top 10 anymore.
Woo, after he scored again this week, man.
I don't think he's as good as he produces. I think he's a touchdown merchant, and I think he has a fumbling issue, which is a McVay. It's a big red flag to McVay. I think he's primed to get replaced by a Quinshad Judkins or Caleb Johnson or one of those 6 foot, 100 or 215 pound bully balls at the goal line. He's good. He's still in my top 12. I just don't think I don't even think he's going to get a contract with the Rams again. If he does, he's going to be back in the top 10.
Yeah.
I'm taking Kamara. I'm taking Henry. I'm taking these guys over Jonathan Taylor and Kyron Williams at this point.
Jonathan Taylor's bothering me.
He's just
killing me.
He's just, it's not happening with him.
You can't. And I made offers. I'm down to 1 share of Jonathan Taylor because I was selling when he came back. I was trying to move. And now I can't really get much of anything. I've made offers. No one's willing to pay a first, which he's still worth a first. Let's be honest. But like, I'm just not getting it. So you have Mixon and Kamara over McCaffrey.
I have Mixon over Kamara, and then I have Brees in his own tier with Saquon and all them. And then the next tier starts off Kenneth Walker, Mixon, Kamara, Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Josh Jacobs.
Okay.
And Jonathan Taylor. He's in there too with them, but he's at the back
I got
end.
Walker at 8, but if I'm a contender, if I could get any of those guys, if I could get Henry, Jacobs, Mixon, or Kamara in a second for Walker, I would take the vet. You know, like if I would take the vet plus insulation. Because Snoog, every year we get those running backs in the second round. We're drafting Bucky Irvin in the late second. We're drafting, like every year we're going to get one of those guys that ends up giving you some production in that second round range. So I love it. I'm okay paying a first. I would rather do a 26 for either Chase or Montgomery. I would pay a late 25 first right now for Bucky Irving. I'm okay with those because I feel like Bucky's going to give you a little bit more longevity. So when you're paying in there again, man, I mean, he led the league in targets this week with just 6 at running back, but it shows you that if Rachaad White was actually out and if Bucky became the only guy in town, the numbers would be absolutely fantastic.
100%.
The other guy that I'm really interested in, and everybody was selling, and I think they were panic selling a little bit, is CeeDee Lamb had 12 targets again. CeeDee Lamb over the last 4 weeks has 63 targets. I don't think the touchdown upside is the same, but the volume is actually more. Cooper Rush is throwing the ball more to CeeDee Lamb. So, I mean, I think you're going to get a safe 15 points from CeeDee Lamb every week, where I saw a lot of people trading CeeDee Lamb for Garrett Wilson in a second, CeeDee Lamb for Puka Nacua in a second, CeeDee Lamb for Nico Collins in a second. And now I'm like, I think next year we're going to see this flip-flop real quick. So if you can go out there and you can buy CeeDee Lamb, I'm for it because I think he's going to bounce back, and he's going to bounce back hard. Speaking of the guys, and this is why targets are so important, Snoog, is over the last 4 weeks, CeeDee Lamb's number 1 was 63. Jamar Chase, number 2, 52. Cooper Kupp, 50. Puka, 49. As long as Stafford's healthy, both of these guys are going to eat. They're both wide receiver 1s. But here's the guy that's just blowing me away is right now I'm looking at it. Courtland Sutton has 48 targets over the last 5 weeks. Right now, you look at what he's actually been able to do, and it's absolutely just mind-blowing to me that you can get him for a late second. But right now, he is, let me pull this up. Over the last 5 weeks, wide receiver 2 at 20.8 fantasy points per game. First in the NFL in yards at 467. Fourth in targets with 48. Snoog, Courtland Sutton with Bo Nix is producing as a wide receiver 1 you can buy for a second.
Listen to this. I benched DJ Moore, who had 27 in my home league against my buddy. And it was like, I'm fighting for first seed with another guy, and then he's in third. So if I lose, I still hit median. It doesn't matter. I still keep first place, but it's close because I have to play the other guy I'm fighting with for second seed next week for first. And I texted my buddy. I'm like, wow, I really started Cortland Sutton over DJ Moore. Like, that's the classic, like, just overthinking it, like, thing to do. And he was like, I
Then he
know.
went
Why would you do that? And he literally dropped like 30. And he texted me. He was like, dude, holy shit. Like, so it's kind of funny. Like, things that you do like that. Like, I'm big on just going with the better player, going with my gut, don't overthink it. But like, sometimes you have to overthink it, and it pays off somehow. So that's something cool that happened this weekend. But
and he's a guy that he's my wide receiver. I'm in one league where, I'm right now, I'm the 1 seed, and I have Cup and Lamb, and he was my wide receiver 3 all year, and I've been trying to trade him all year. Like, I've been just trying to, because I had Mike Evans on the bench, and I'm like, or with the injury and everything like that, and nobody would buy him. And even now, no one's even offered me a second. Pay a second for Cortland Sutton, please. Like, go out and buy him. He is currently the wide receiver 9 on the season. If you look over the last, after the New Orleans game when he was injured, or no, he wasn't injured. He just had 0 targets. I don't know what happened, but man, Bo Nix is like, after that, has just peppered him so bad. Like, he's been 11 targets, 10 targets, 9, 8, 10. Before that, he had 3 games in the beginning of the year where he was doing this. So he has Indianapolis in week 15, Cincinnati, a shootout in week 17, Chargers in week 16 is a little bit tough. Go buy Cortland Sutton. Tear down off some guys. This is the perfect insulated target for a win now. A lot of people, we've talked about that and we've preached it in the past about insulated targets for rebuild. But if you're not the 1 seed or the 2 seed, and you can trade Devonta Smith for Cortland Sutton in a first, if you can trade, I think, honestly, I think you could give Chris Olave and get Sutton in a first. You could give Jaden Reed and a third and get Sutton in a first. Tyreek Hill. Like, these are the insulated trades where you're arguably going to get the same production, if not better. It's just you move off of a name cachet. And Jalen Waddle had a big game. I think I could get Sutton and a first for Waddle and maybe a toss-in piece. These are those areas where insulate just in case you don't win it all. If you're the 1 seed, push the chips in big time. If you're the 5 seed, why not insulate a little bit? Why not just say, you know what? Tyreek Hill's getting old. The production hasn't been there. Or, one of these other guys isn't there. Let me just buy in. One guy I've moved up the most in my entire dynasty rankings. I almost moved him up to my wide receiver 12. He's the wide receiver 13 in dynasty. It's Jackson Smith and Jigba now. Like, I'm done. I'm done playing the games. We've gone all over the place. You and I loved him. Then we didn't like the production. Then we loved him again. Then we didn't like the usage. Then
we knew this new coaching staff was going to unlock him and Kenneth Walker. And Kenny Walker's been quiet lately, but I think he's going to have some big weeks coming up.
DK Metcalf gets injured. Now all of a sudden, Jackson Smith and Jigba just blossoms into the stud that we thought he was going to be when he came out. And I'm going to say some names here, and you tell me if you'd rather have JSN or them. You ready?
Yep.
George Pickens. I have
JSN. I think JSN has a better fantasy projection, but I think George Pickens is better as a good player.
I did
They're
it twice.
Going to be back to back for me when I do my rankings.
I have JSN 13, Pickens 14, Zay Flowers 15, Rashee Rice 16, Metcalf 17. I'm really close to, if you're contending right now, do you think you could get Jackson Smith and Jigba and a second for Brian Thomas? Or are we past that? I saw Brian Thomas.
I think you could.
Brian
be
Thomas
TJ
Jr.
higher.
Brian Thomas Jr. and Drake London, 2 spots ahead of them. But I think production-wise, I think I might take the shot on Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think you can get Jackson Smith and a mid first for Marvin Harrison Jr. right now. Like, I think you could get Jackson Smith and Jigba and a mid first for a AJ Brown and Nico Collins. I'm not saying that's the move right now, but if you're a fringe playoff team, I think it is, because I think you get yourself into a spot, and then next year that pick becomes 106, and then you leave with Travis Hunter and Jackson Smith and Jigba instead of AJ Brown if you're borderline. If you're all in, AJ Brown is going to be the way to go. Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, those 3 guys are going to win you championships, as well as Amon-Ra St. Brown. I have a lot of people reaching out to me, Snoog, right now, and Malik Neighbors is top 10 in targets over this time period. But a lot of people are saying, yo, would you trade Malik Neighbors for Amon-Ra and a James Conner type or someone else in there? And I'm like, I think right now
Nico Collins and Amon-Ra St. Brown over Malik Neighbors, I think, at this point. Just because
targets
don't
are
know
there.
when the Giants are going to figure it out, and they're not good.
Yeah. So, I mean,
So,
I really struggle when people come at me about Malik Neighbors and Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson, he's a wide receiver 6 on the year. He's still, I got a lot of flack in the Discord. He's still my wide receiver 6 in Dynasty. I have him above Puka, Nico, and AJ Brown. But I said it's arguable. If you're all in,
I have him
I can
below
have
those guys now, and it hurts me because I'm like such a big Garrett Wilson fan. But I just think like they're a shit show. Like both of the New York teams are burning to the ground, and it's like, I would be shocked if he signs with that team when his contract's up.
Yeah,
like dude, go play for like the Chargers, go play for the Patriots, go play for like a team with a good quarterback and a team with a future. Like, stop. I don't care how much the money the Jets offer you. If I'm Breece Hall and I'm Garrett Wilson, I'm saying thanks for the 4 years. I'll see you guys never.
I'm trying to I was looking at the 2025 free agent list, and it's Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Joe Flacco, probably retiring, Jameis Winston. I mean, Jameis Winston would be great for him, but that's not going to happen. It's ugly. Like the idea of it's going to have to be a trade, like one of these teams is going to have to, he's in a bit of a purgatory. So I get that completely. The fact that he's produced as wide receiver 6 with Aaron Rodgers, who's played as poorly as he does, is definitely something that's, as young as he is something that is enticing going forward. But I think we're in an interesting area where I have no problem moving between Garrett and Malik to Amon-Ra, Nico, and Puka if you're contending, because you're going to get a similar ceiling, but a floor is way higher. The other guys that complete that top 10 list for targets right now, Calvin Ridley at 44. I think he's a great buy for a second, because Tennessee, Will Levis is sneakily looking good the last 3 weeks. Like, Will Levis has actually played really good football. And I think Calvin Ridley is someone that I would pay a second for. Josh Downs and Justin Jefferson finish out the list at 40 targets. I have moved Jamar Chase over Justin Jefferson in my dynasty rankings, still the same tier, because the rest of the season, I want Jamar Chase so much more on my teams. I'm not saying you make one trade for the other, but I have moved Chase over Jefferson. I think it's splitting hairs, but if you're trying to win, it's got to be Chase, right?
Yeah, it's got to be Jamar. Jamar is the guy. He's dynasty wide receiver 1 right now, and honestly, in the future, I think Justin Jefferson's a better player. I think they're very, very close as talents. I just think I'm going with Joe Burrow over whatever the heck the Vikings have.
Yeah, I think McCarthy's going to be fine next year. I think Darnold's been a good story, and he's kept Jefferson relevant. Like, a lot of people were thinking Jefferson was going to play poorly, but I think it's really just been a scenario where he's kept him going. He's been right in that area. Snook, I want to talk, because I know you love talking running backs. I want to talk about some of these guys down the stretch that are going to win you championships. We talk about targets. We've been doing a lot talking about, what wide receivers are getting targets, what running backs, and the top of the list in Dynasty. I mean, those guys are all hammering home targets, your running back position. But who are the guys for you that are catching passes, guys that are going to win you championships to move down the stretch?
Yeah, I really, really, really love, I know I always say this, but I think from a dynasty perspective, someone that you might think has cooled down a little bit lately is Alvin Kamara. I mean, just alone, not scoring touchdowns. He's an RB1 overall, scoring 20 points a game, damn near. I mean, if you just look at his receiving production alone, he's
only guy with over 6 targets per game.
Since week 1, he's had less than 4 receptions in 3 games. That's it. And week 2 was a blowout. They won, and he had 44 points, and he was running the ball the whole time.
His targets are insane.
He is literally he's a strong flex pit play just as a receiver, and he's getting 16 to 25 rushing attempts a game. His playoff schedule coming up: the Rams, the Giants, the Commanders, Green Bay, which is tough, and then Raiders. I mean, if you get to the championship, that Raiders game, I mean, he played the Raiders last year. He dropped, where is it? Oh no, it was 2 years ago. He dropped 42.8 against the Raiders 2 years ago. And the year before that, he dropped 41 against the Raiders. He's got the Raiders name. So, I mean, he's a guy that's still cheap in Dynasty. I mean, maybe you give up a late first, maybe you give up a trio or a pair of seconds. But, I mean, he's super cheap from that perspective. And then one guy also I want to talk about who I think is a very good league winner is going to be Josh Jacobs. And it's coming down and he's finally scoring touchdowns and he's catching the ball out of the backfield. Not every game, but I mean, 4 receptions, 1 reception, 3 receptions, 5 receptions, 1 reception, 4 receptions. It's a little shaky, but he's still getting some good volume there on top of 26, 18, 25, 13, 18 carries. Like, that's another guy, workhorse guy. He scored 20 plus in 5 out of his last 6 games. I mean, his playoff schedule coming up. He's got New Orleans in week 16. He's got Seattle in week 15 and Minnesota in week 17. 3 historically bad, seasonal bad rushing defenses this year. I mean, when he played Minnesota in week 4, he got injured, but he had 12 points, 5.67 yards per carry, 4 receptions, like solid week, didn't get in the end zone, but only played 50% of snaps. He's someone that I think is going to be really good down the stretch. And someone that's a deep, deep, deep sleeper is Amir Abdullah. Like a good cheap guy to pick up off the waivers, throw in as a flex play if you have injuries. He's catching passes. I think he had like 8 receptions this week or something crazy like that. So
6 targets. I think he had 5 receptions. Back to Jacobs. Jacobs gets the Saints in week 16. The Saints are the second worst run defense. Minnesota is actually really good, but I think Josh Jacobs with Jordan Love is matchup proof. When Jordan Love was out, those were the only 3 weeks where he was outside the top 24. Every other week, he has 3 weeks out of the last 4 inside the top 5. He's a screaming buy. Again, I would pay a late 25 first. I would pay any 26 first outside the mid. I've moved him above. Hold on a second here. I've moved him into my top 12. Like, because you have to look at what he's been able to do year in, year out. And then we seem to discount him every single year. We start pushing him out. I've moved him above Mixon, above Bucky, and above Kamara because of his age in comparison. But I mean, I'm okay with all those guys there. That's that area I want to live in with the Henry, Cook, Jacobs, Mixon, Kamara, and now Bucky Irving. Like, I want to live in that area. I just want to pick those guys up nonstop. The other guys that are, I think, league winners because of those receptions, there's 3 other guys that are averaging over 5 targets a game. Obviously, Breece Hall, but the name cachet has slowed down. If Tyrod Taylor plays, I think Breece Hall actually does better. I think Breece Hall gets a bunch of dump offs, and I think he actually plays closer to what he did last year. Christian McCaffrey's getting
Breece Hall was literally better with bad quarterbacks.
Yeah, because they dumped him the ball.
Yeah, it's just check down and yak.
And I think Tyrod would do that with him. Christian McCaffrey is starting to get his legs underneath him. He's got 5.3 targets per game, and I think once Purdy's back, I think this offense is going to start clicking again. Devon Achane, 5 targets per game. He's obviously a league winner. Then the other guys that are close, the guys that are over 4. Chase Brown, Javonte Williams, surprisingly, Isaiah Pacheco when he's back, Rachaad White, Bijan, and Kenneth Walker are all over 4 targets per game. We know
Kenneth Walker and Bijan are definitely up. It pisses me off that Jahmyr Gibbs isn't, dude. Like, come on,
no, he should. I mean,
that's bad.
Mixon's at 3.8. Chuba's at 3.6. By the way, Chuba, just go by him. It's Jonathan Brooks is going to get eased in. He had another 19 points against the best rushing defense in the NFL against Kansas City. Chuba Hubbard's just start him. Just start him. Use the fact that Brooks is out. And some people, I bought him today for a pair of thirds because someone's like, I don't want him on my team anymore. Like, he's young, he's putting up points. Quit playing around. But I mean, where is Gibbs even at? Bucky's at 3.1. Saquon's at 3 even. Jahmyr Gibbs is at 2.9 targets per game. Not receptions, targets. He has 2 games with 0 targets and 2 games with 1. That just blows my mind. I mean, I feel like Gibbs in the playoffs is just going to be a different beast because they're going to be tougher competition. They need him. A lot of people are like, this Lions offense, it's frustrating sometimes because
they're just too good. They're too good.
They really are. And that's what I'm saying.
My brother is just really getting into a little bit of sports betting. So he does like these little $5 and like $10 little touchdown parlays every week. He has put Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in a touchdown parlay every single week this year. The only one it didn't hit was like the Texans game when they both didn't score, and like 1 or 2 other games. But they literally score 1 or 2 touchdowns each every week. It's
15,
insane.
16, 17. Listen to this. Buffalo in 15. They're going to use him. It's going to be a shootout. 16, Chicago. That's going to be a Montgomery game. They run all over him. Week 17, San Francisco. So we could see Jahmyr Gibbs' biggest games come in the playoffs.
I think Buffalo is going to be his biggest game of the year.
Those are going to be big time shootouts in San Francisco too.
Is Buffalo a bad run defense?
They give up the most receptions to running backs in the league. Their actual run defense itself isn't bad
coverage. They play
but they give
coverage.
up a lot of fantasy points to running backs, but they are actually a decent.
Honestly, I'll be honest with you. Looking at the Lions' schedule from week 13 to 17 doesn't get me excited, but they're just so good that it's like, yeah. I honestly think when you see harder matchups, it's better for Jahmyr Gibbs. Like if you look at when they played Minnesota in week 7, he had 32. When they played Seattle, he had 20. When they played the Rams and the Buccaneers, he had 18 and 17.6. Tennessee, one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Joe Mixon had like 14 carries for 20 yards against them. He had 127 rushing yards and 20 points. The Colts stink, but he had 25. So I've noticed that on the better teams. I mean, dude, he's the RB4 right now with his bye week. 207 fantasy points, 5.75 yards per carry, and he's pacing 1,000 yards. He already has 10 touchdowns. He's probably going to hit like that 40 reception mark, which is really sad because I think he should have went up and not down this year in receptions. But he's making up for it in touchdown categories. But I mean, he's at 10.2 yards per catch. That's really good for a running back. So the receptions is when he does get them, they're typically going to be good, efficient ones. Like he had 34 receiving yards, 44, 54, 37. So I think, yeah, like you said, against like those better teams like Minnesota, he had 4 for 44. Week 1 against the Rams, he had 4 for 34. And then, so a lot of those better receptions are coming against the better teams, which is good to see.
You reminded me, I have a trade that's we talked about we're going to revisit. I want to get your opinion here because I have tons of wide receivers. I have Bowers as my tight end 1, so I'm offering up Pickens, Kraft, a first and a second. The second's late, the first is mid for Gibbs, Njoku, and Rachaad White. Would you push in on that for Gibbs to be all in and just give yourself? I think Njoku's an upgrade from Kraft. I think right now it basically comes down to, would you trade George Pickens in a mid-ish first, like 106, 107 for Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was at. It feels good, but we're in that area. Wide receivers targets right now. Do you know who's number 1 in the NFL in targets per game?
Garrett Wilson.
Malik Neighbors.
Really?
At 11.8. Garrett Wilson has the most targets overall with 108 with 9.8. Cooper Kupp.
Neighbors missed some time. That's why, right?
Cooper Kupp. Yep. Cooper Kupp and Neighbors are the only guys over 11. I am paying a first for Cooper Kupp right now. I know I would rather it be 26. It has to be late, but I'm buying Cooper Kupp. He's worth a first. I don't care. He's going to win you a championship. Ever since he's been back, he's just been fantastic. CeeDee Lamb's at 10.6. T. Higgins is at 9.7. And T. Higgins right now, we had that gap there, but you look at what he's done since week 4, 10, 14, 7, 8, 13. He's getting peppered. That offense is going to be fun down the stretch. I'm paying T. Higgins. I would pay something towards that mid-ish first. Jamar Chase is at 9.1, a little bit less than Higgins, actually. Then it gets tricky, right? Our guys in that 8-9 range, it's Devontae Adams. And I would rather have Kupp, Evans, and then Adams, and then McLaurin out of those 4. Do you have any argument there? Because people have been asking me, who do I buy out of these guys? Kupp's my number 1. Evans is my number 2. Then it's a tier break. And then it's McLaurin and Adams are like neck and neck, depending on what you have. You could argue McLaurin's going to put up better points, but it's just I struggle with that because people are like, do I give a first for those guys? I said, no, I would pay a first for Evans and I would pay a first for Kupp, but I will no longer do it for Adams or McLaurin. And it's got to be 26 for Evans.
I don't know if I'm paying a first for any of them. Maybe a late 26 first.
Yeah.
For like a Kupp in a second, or Evans in a second, or Evans in a Sutton, or a Myers type of player to throw back. But I just think with that first, you can add a second and go get someone slightly better. Go get a Tyreek Hill. Right. Go get I don't know, like one of those better guys, like a George Pickens, a Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's giving you production and is young and can gain value.
Is it worth paying an extra first to get to Tyreek Hill than Cooper Kupp, considering Cooper Kupp has put up more points?
Like, no. Yeah, you're right. No.
Right. I'm not trying to.
Cooper Kupp's literally in a better situation to score points right now.
Right. That's why I said, and so is Baker Mayfield, because
what do you think about?
I'm sorry, Mike Evans, because Baker Mayfield is balling out.
What do you think about buying DJ Moore? What do you think about buying DJ Moore now that they fired their OC? They fired their OC. Caleb Williams looked great, and now he is like the guy. Like he is getting a lot of manufactured touches.
He's a good
getting
buy.
those. He looks like he did last year. The past 2 weeks, he's explosive,
I struggled with
much
my rankings because I have him at wide receiver 25, and he's worth the 111 currently. And I feel like that's the market. Like I'm not trying to predict too much, but I feel like that's a market above Waddle, above Ayuk. But he's below, for some reason, he's below Tyreek, Reed, Olave, Devonta, and Ladd. And I think you can make some targets there. You could easily cash in on that.
These 4 things matter to me now for wideouts: quarterback play, the coaching staff, targets, talent.
Yeah, in that order.
4 things is No, I'm just saying in general.
Because
no order.
Talent,
QB plays 1.
QB play's got to be there, right? And the coaching staff, we've seen it, right? The coaching staff Waldron is single-handedly taking down DJ Moore and Jackson Smith-Njigba. We saw Smith-Njigba starting to come out, and now DJ Moore starting to come out a little bit too. And I like that down the stretch. If you're not all in, no, actually, I moved JSN above DK Metcalf, so I'm not even going to bring that up. The other guys that I'm really into are the guys that are like averaging 8 targets per game. That's Amon-Ra, Puka Nacua, Drake London, JSN, Nico, and Jefferson. Like those are the guys. I mean, it's sad because Godwin was in that area and Diggs was in that area and Rice was in that area, and they're not there for you now. But these other guys are right there. Sutton's at 7.7. Pickens is at 7.7, and so is Jacoby Myers. I think we've given you some guys to go out there and buy, because I think what you have to do is you have to look at the targets right now. You have to chase them. You have to see who's getting peppered, who's the guys that are actually there. When you look at tight ends, who are the 2 tight ends over 8 targets per game? It's Kelsey and Bowers. If you're contending, you buy Kelsey. If you can buy Bowers anywhere, you do it. Like I did the other day, Snoog, and I don't know if you're going to hate me for it or not, but it was on the team that I sent you. And if you guys, I put it on Twitter today. I had Kincaid, Andrews, Laporta, and Pitts as tight end. So I traded Laporta and Chris Olave for Brock Bowers. And I feel great about it. I do. But like, could you imagine talking about that trade in August? Like you're like, oh, I got hosed. But now I'm okay, because Bowers is leads the league in targets for tight ends. He's going to be, since week 5, he's had 12, 10, 14, 5, and 8, and 16 targets.
That's crazy, yeah.
And then now in week 12, he had another 10. So like we are seeing that the tricky part there is then you got McBride, Njoku, Ingram, and Otten all over 7, Kittle over 6, and then everybody else is under 6. So that's where it's like we talk about John, who's really come on lately, but he's at 5.2. I think those are the guys you get. We tried to bring you as much information this time as possible. I know a lot of you guys have been saying, you and Dad keep talking about live streams and doing those. We wanted to bring you a podcast just straight up talking about all the content, all the factual information, because you guys that are the loyal listeners, you guys have been there the whole time. You guys understand what we're bringing to the table. You guys are the guys that are joining the Patreon. You guys are guys that are in the Discord. You guys are the guys that also follow on YouTube. So we appreciate you. We're here to win you some money down the stretch. So join that Patreon, $5 a month. We're going to help you cash in, because I'm interested to see how many championships we get in that. Just those guys that didn't win last year that are going to this year. Snoog and I are here for you.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. It's coming up. It gets nerve-wracking a little when you start to get to week 15, and it's like, it's really time, and just one loss. One loss is all it takes.
That's why the bye is
incredible.
Top 3, bottom 3, right? So if you go by the smash accept model, you are not stressed at this time of year, because you're going to either get a bye, or you're going to play the 6th seed, or you're going to get the 101 through 103. And that's where every year
I have a lot of 7 playoff team leagues, and I hate it because I have so many first place teams. So it's like, okay, straight, but I have like probably 4 or 5 second place.
How do you do
teams.
7?
It just first gets a bye, and then it's 2, 7, 3, 6. I hate it. I'm changing it. It's going to be trash. 6 all around next year.
No, that's bad.
Terrible.
That's bad. I hate that. And you got to get that bye, and that's why people were criticizing me in week 3 and 4 when I was trading to get, backup running backs that were getting opportunities for a third. I was like, who was it? We had guys there early part of the season where they were, getting opportunities like Trey Sermon. I traded a 4th and Trey Sermon for a 3rd, and he won me 2 weeks, and now I'm the 1 seed. You know what I mean? As opposed to if I drop into the 3rd spot, people are like, that trade doesn't make sense. If I would give up a 3rd, heck, I would give up a 2nd if I knew I was going into to get a bye. You know what I mean? If you're the difference between a bye week 1, because Snook, last year, like I was nearly almost 100% of top 3, bottom 3, but my one team that was awesome all year had bad luck, ended up being the 4 seed, ended up playing against Amari Cooper, got ousted right away. And it's like you want to make sure you're in those positions. So, guys, we appreciate the support. Thanks again for tuning in, and enjoy the process. That was good.